4 Chinese cargo planes turned off their transponders and disappeared from radar before landing in Iran. That report is circulating across intelligence monitoring communities right now, and it has not been officially confirmed. I want to be honest with you about that up front, because what I am about to tell you does not need the cargo planes to be devastating. The confirmed intelligence is worse. The Defense Intelligence Agency, the Pentagon's own military intelligence arm, formally assessed that China was weighing whether to provide Iran with advanced X-band radar systems. Not a rumor, not a social media report. A formal assessment by the most sophisticated military intelligence apparatus on Earth, sourced to multiple officials and reported this week. X-band radar systems that would significantly enhance Iran's ability to detect and track incoming threats. Low-flying drones, cruise missiles, precision strike packages. The exact weapons America and Israel have been using to degrade Iran's military infrastructure since Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th. And while that assessment was being made, Russia was separately sharing intelligence with Iran on American military positions across the Middle East. Real-time targeting information, the locations of American assets, handed to the country currently firing on merchant vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. This is not a regional conflict anymore. What is unfolding right now in the waters off Iran's coast and in the back channels between Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran represents a restructuring of the global power alignment that the mainstream coverage is almost entirely failing to explain. And today we are going to walk through exactly what is happening, why China is playing both sides simultaneously, and what it means for the Wednesday deadline that could determine whether this crisis resolves or explodes. Once you see this picture completely, you cannot unsee it. Let me start with the confirmed facts in sequence, because the sequence is everything. On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, coordinated airstrikes on Iran targeting nuclear facilities, military infrastructure, and leadership. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed. Iran's nuclear program at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan was severely damaged. The IRGC retaliated with missiles and drones across Israel, American bases, and Gulf states. In the immediate aftermath, within days of the war beginning, American intelligence agencies detected that China was actively weighing whether to provide Iran with advanced radar systems, not after weeks of deliberation, within days. That tells you something critical about Beijing's strategic calculus. China was watching the opening phase of the most significant American military operation in the Middle East in 2 decades, and its first instinct was to assess whether it could help Iran survive it. Why does that matter? Because China buys approximately 90% of Iran's exported oil. China is Iran's economic lifeline. Without Chinese purchases, Iranian oil revenues collapse, the economy implodes, and the government loses the financial foundation of its domestic political support. China is not a neutral bystander in this conflict. China is Iran's most important patron, and it is now apparently considering whether to become Iran's most important military technology supplier as well. Here is what the X-band radar transfer would actually mean on the battlefield. Because this is not an abstract technology discussion. This is geometry. X-band radar systems give the operator a dramatically sharper picture of incoming low-altitude threats. The weapons America has been using most effectively against Iran, low-flying cruise missiles, precision drones, standoff strike packages, are specifically designed to fly below the detection threshold of conventional radar. X-band closes that gap. It does not make Iran invulnerable, but it makes surprise attacks significantly harder. It shortens the targeting advantage that American and Israeli planners have relied on throughout this campaign. It means more Iranian air defense systems survive each strike. And surviving air defense systems means Iran can keep firing back. If those systems were delivered on those cargo planes, confirmed or not, the military geometry of this conflict changed this week. Now let me give you the full picture of what China is doing. Because it is one of the most sophisticated geopolitical double games being played anywhere on Earth right now. What China says it wants: peace, de-escalation, an end to hostilities, reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. China's foreign minister stated publicly on March 8th that Beijing wanted a ceasefire and an effort to keep the conflict from spilling over. China's embassy spokesperson said this week that Beijing's position is, and I am quoting directly, open and above board, and that China never engages in actions that escalate conflicts. What China is actually doing: buying 90% of Iran's oil, providing satellite intelligence through the Beidou navigation system that Iran has used for targeting, assessing whether to transfer X-band radar that would fundamentally alter the air defense equation, and, according to U.S. intelligence, potentially routing military transfers through third countries specifically to obscure direct involvement. That last detail is critical. The report noted that China was weighing transferring air defense systems to Iran, potentially routed through third countries to obscure direct involvement. That is not the behavior of a country that is open and above board. That is the behavior of a country that wants the strategic benefit of supporting Iran without the diplomatic cost of being seen to do so. And Trump knows it. Trump personally wrote a letter to Xi Jinping asking him not to supply Iran with weapons. He said this publicly in a Fox Business interview. Think about what that tells you. The President of the United States is writing personal letters to the President of China asking him not to arm America's adversary, while simultaneously planning a state visit to Beijing next month that he described as potentially historic. That is not the posture of a man who has been given credible assurances. That is the posture of a man managing a relationship where the other side is doing something he cannot publicly confront without destroying the diplomatic architecture he needs for the Iran deal. Defense Secretary Hegseth was asked directly about the radar systems this week. His answer was, President Trump has a very strong and direct relationship with President Xi, and they've communicated on that, and China has assured us that that indeed is not going to happen. China assured us. That is not a denial. That is a managed diplomatic statement that allows both governments to maintain their public positions, while the intelligence community continues to assess what is actually moving on those transponder dark cargo flights. Let me show you why this matters for the Wednesday deadline specifically. The Iran nuclear deal that Trump has been describing. 100% permanent halt, $0 paid, Iran surrendering its enriched uranium, requires Iran to make concessions that are politically catastrophic domestically. The Iranian government has to explain to its own population why it is surrendering the nuclear program it has sacrificed decades of economic suffering to build, in exchange for an end to a war it did not start and a blockade it cannot currently break. The answer to how Iran survives that domestically is China. If Beijing is signaling to Tehran, through back channels, through cargo flights, through radar system assessments, that China will not abandon Iran regardless of what deal is signed, then Iran has a safety net. It can sign a deal, accept the public humiliation of surrendering its nuclear program, and privately know that Chinese economic support and potentially Chinese military technology continues regardless. That is not a resolution. That is a temporary arrangement that preserves Iran's long-term strategic position while allowing Trump to claim victory. And here is the asymmetry that should alarm every serious analyst watching this situation. Trump is managing a Wednesday deadline. Xi Jinping is managing a 20-year strategic horizon. China has been building its relationship with Iran for 2 decades and has built an economic dependency so deep that Iran cannot function without Chinese oil purchases. America's leverage, military, economic, diplomatic, is real and significant, but it is time-limited. China's leverage is structural and permanent. Every great power that has tried to permanently alter Iran's strategic alignment through military pressure has eventually had to accommodate the reality that Iran's most important economic relationship is not with the West. The British tried with oil in 1953. The result was a coup and 50 years of blowback. The Americans tried with sanctions for 40 years. The result was Iran becoming China's most important Middle East energy partner. Now, America is trying with B-2 bombers and naval blockades, and China is quietly assessing what it can deliver on transponder dark cargo flights. History does not announce itself when the structural reality reasserts itself. It announces itself when the deal that was supposed to be permanent starts to unravel. And the country that was supposed to be isolated turns out to have a very powerful friend who never actually left. Here is what to watch in the next 72 hours. Watch whether Trump addresses China directly and publicly regarding the cargo flights. If he does, it means the intelligence assessment has hardened from weighing to confirmed transfer. And the diplomatic pressure campaign is shifting to a public confrontation. That has massive implications for the China visit scheduled for next month. Watch whether Iran's negotiating position in the weekend talks hardens or softens. If China has just delivered a confidence-building package, radar systems, ammunition, military supplies, Iran's negotiators arrive at the table with more leverage than they had last week. A strengthened Iran negotiates differently than a cornered one. Watch the tariff threat. Trump said last week he would impose an immediate 50% tariff on any country that supplied Iran with weapons. China's foreign ministry called those reports fabricated. If concrete evidence of a transfer surfaces, Trump faces a direct choice between his tariff threat and his Beijing summit. That choice will tell you everything about where American leverage over China actually stands. Watch the Wednesday ceasefire deadline. If no deal is reached and operations resume, Chinese-supplied radar systems in operational Iranian air defenses change the risk calculation for every American aircraft in the theater. That is not a diplomatic problem. That is a force protection problem. The people around you are reading the cargo plane story as a curiosity, a mysterious headline about transponders going dark. They are missing the confirmed intelligence underneath it. The Defense Intelligence Agency assessment, the Russian targeting intelligence, the Beidou satellite navigation, the X-band radar deliberations, the personal letter from Trump to Xi, the embassy spokesperson who said China never escalates while its intelligence community was assessing exactly how to do that. This is not a regional war between America and Iran. This is the opening chapter of the great power competition, playing out in real time in the Strait of Hormuz, on cargo planes with their transponders off, in letters between presidents that are never fully published, in intelligence assessments that are leaked to reporters because someone in Washington wants the public to understand what is actually happening. The Wednesday deadline is 3 days away, and China is not neutral. Share this. Not for the algorithm. Share it because the story underneath the headline is the one that matters. We will be here for every move.